In times of hardship, when the weight of life seems unbearable and the road ahead stretches endlessly into uncertainty, it is easy to feel overwhelmed. The very fabric of our hopes and dreams can appear to unravel before our eyes. Yet in these moments there is a timeless truth that remains steadfast and unchanging. God's power is greater than any difficulty we may face. The struggle we encounter is not an indication of our weakness, nor a reflection of God's absence. Rather, it is an invitation to trust in His sovereign might, to allow our hearts to be shaped by His eternal purpose. For in every trial, there is a lesson in perseverance, a chance for us to rise above our circumstances and discover that the strength to endure is not found within ourselves, but in Him who holds the universe together. The world may tell us to rely on our own understanding, to push through the pain and seek quick solutions. But there is wisdom in waiting, in resting not in the certainty of our own efforts, but in the assurance of God's timing. In our impatience, we often forget that breakthroughs do not always come in the form we expect. Sometimes it is in the quiet stillness of waiting that God reveals His greatest works, shaping us into something stronger and more resilient than we ever could have imagined. When faced with overwhelming odds, we must remember that our difficulties are not insurmountable when placed in the hands of the Creator. What is impossible for man is not beyond the reach of God's power. Our job is to truly believe that no matter the depth of the challenge or the length of the wait, God is at work on our behalf. This belief is not a passive resignation to fate, but an active, living faith that moves us to press forward, even when the path ahead is unclear. It is a faith that trusts in the unseen, that believes in the promised breakthrough even when it seems far off. For in God's economy, time is not measured by our clocks. The fullness of His plan unfolds in its own perfect time, and the breakthrough we wait for may come when we least expect it often. It arrives after we have learned to let go and trust. So, let us embrace our difficulties not as burdens, but as opportunities to lean into God's power, to see the unseen, and to be refined in the fire of His love. And when the breakthrough comes, as it surely will, we will look back and marvel not at the strength we thought we had, but at the boundless power of God that carried us through. In the end, the trials of today are not permanent. They are the seeds of a future filled with hope and promise. Let us hold fast to this truth. If we believe in God's power and wait for His timing, the breakthrough will come, and it will be more than we ever imagined. When we truly believe in God's omnipotence, we see our problems in a different light. Instead of feeling overwhelmed or defeated by obstacles, we recognize that God is bigger than any challenge we face. This shift in perspective helps us approach difficulties with hope and confidence, knowing that God's power can carry us through. Struggles are not meant to defeat us, but to refine us. Each hardship presents an opportunity to grow in faith, patience, and character. God often uses difficulties to shape us, preparing us for greater things in the future. When we view struggles as opportunities for growth, we are more likely to rise above them. God's sense of timing transcends our own understanding. Often we want things to happen quickly or on our own schedule. However, God's timing is always perfect, even if it doesn't align with our desires. Trusting in His timing means understanding that He has a purpose for everything, even in the waiting periods. When we believe in God's power, we are empowered to endure hardships with a sense of hope. Instead of succumbing to despair or fear, we hold on to the hope that God is in control and that our trials are temporary. This belief gives us the strength to persevere, knowing that God has a greater plan for us. Just as gold is refined by fire, our faith is refined through trials. Difficulties can purify our character, teach us resilience, and make us more like Christ. Though painful, these experiences shape us into stronger, more faithful individuals, ready to face the next challenge with greater wisdom and strength. Waiting can often feel passive, but when we wait with faith in God's plan, we are actively demonstrating trust in His timing. Patience is not simply about enduring the wait, it is about trusting that God is at work, even when we don't see immediate results. It is a proactive form of faith that deepens our relationship with God. God's methods and ways are far beyond our understanding. We may not always see how He is working behind the scenes, but we trust that He is doing so in ways that will ultimately benefit us. Our limited perspective often prevents us from seeing the bigger picture, but we can rest assured that God's ways are always for our good. The Apostle Paul reminds us that God's strength is perfected in our weakness. When we feel powerless or incapable of overcoming our challenges, it is in these moments that God's power shines brightest. Our weaknesses create space for His strength to be evident, allowing us to rely on Him more fully. Instead of viewing obstacles as insurmountable problems, we can choose to see them as opportunities for God to demonstrate His power. When we face difficulties, it's a chance for us to witness firsthand how God can turn situations around, perform miracles, and lead us through challenges in ways we could never have imagined. God's plans for our lives are often revealed over time, not all at once. We may not understand the full picture immediately, but as we continue to trust Him, He gradually reveals His purpose. This gradual unfolding encourages us to live in trust and anticipation, knowing that each step we take is part of His greater plan. Trusting in God's plan is key to overcoming any difficulty. When we face challenges, it's easy to rely on our own strength or devise our own solutions. However, true peace and victory come from surrendering our struggles to God and trusting that He has a purpose for them. Trusting His plan helps us navigate hardships with hope, knowing He is in control. Breakthroughs don't always come immediately. Often, personal growth and transformation must occur first. The challenges we face refine our character, teach us patience, and deepen our faith. God uses these times of growth to prepare us for the breakthrough that follows, ensuring that we are spiritually and emotionally ready for what He has planned. Waiting is often misunderstood as doing nothing, but it is, in fact, a powerful act of trust. When we wait on God, we acknowledge that we don't have all the answers and that we trust His wisdom and timing. It's a conscious choice to surrender our worries and rest in the assurance that God is at work, even when we don't see immediate results. God is all-powerful, and with Him no obstacle is too great. When we face difficulties, we can draw strength from the knowledge that God is with us. Whatever challenges lie ahead, we can face them with courage because God's power is far greater than any of our problems. We may feel weak, but He is strong and will help us overcome. God's provision is not just enough, it's abundant. He is not limited by our circumstances, and His resources are endless. Whether it's financial, emotional, or spiritual provision, God gives us more than we need to face life's challenges. Trusting in His provision helps us to step forward with confidence, knowing that He will provide everything we need. Waiting on God means aligning our desires with His perfect will. While we may have our own plans and timelines, true peace comes from surrendering to God's guidance. By waiting on His timing, we acknowledge that His plan for us is greater than anything we could plan for ourselves, and we trust that He will lead us in the best direction. God's power has no limits, and through Him, our potential is also limitless. We may feel weak or incapable on our own, but with God we are capable of far more than we could ever imagine. His power enables us to overcome our limitations and rise above challenges, unlocking potential that we may not even know we possess. Trials serve as tests of our faith, but they also have the potential to deepen it. As we face difficulties and choose to rely on God, our faith becomes stronger. Through these experiences, we learn to trust God more fully, understanding that He is faithful even in the hardest of times. Our faith is refined, and we emerge more resilient in our belief. While the discomfort we feel in difficult times may seem overwhelming, we must remember that God's plan for us is far more significant than our current struggles. The trials we face are temporary, but God's purpose for us is eternal. We can find comfort in knowing that our struggles are part of a greater plan that will bring long-term growth and blessing. It's in the waiting period that true transformation occurs. God often uses seasons of waiting to shape us, refine our character, and strengthen our faith. While waiting can be challenging, it is during this time that we grow in ways that are necessary for the breakthroughs ahead. God does His deepest work in us during the waiting periods, preparing us for what's to come. No matter how great our struggles may be, they do not define who we are. Our true identity is found in God's power and His love for us. Our challenges are simply temporary obstacles that we face, but the strength we receive from God is eternal. Understanding that God's power defines us allows us to approach difficulties with a sense of confidence and dignity, knowing that He is with us through it all. Our human nature often desires immediate solutions, but God's timing is perfect in ways we might not understand. While we may want things to happen quickly, God's timing allows us to grow, develop patience, and receive His blessings at the right moment. Trusting that God's timing is always better than our own helps us to remain faithful during seasons of waiting. Faith gives us the ability to look beyond the current pain or hardship to the future promise that God has for us. While our circumstances may be difficult, faith allows us to see that they are temporary and that God is preparing something far greater. By focusing on God's promises rather than the present suffering, we find hope and strength to endure. Each challenge we face is an opportunity to see and experience God's faithfulness in action. When we are in the midst of trials, it's easy to feel like God has abandoned us, but in reality, He is working behind the scenes to bring us through. Every challenge provides a new chance to witness His power and faithfulness as He guides us through difficult times. Patience is not just about waiting, it is about waiting with faith, trust, and a willingness to let God work in His timing. It is through patience that we allow God to unfold His plan for us, and in doing so, we unlock the breakthrough we are seeking. Patience teaches us to rely on God's timing and trust that He will provide at just the right moment. Waiting is not just about enduring, it is about strengthening our character. During times of waiting, we learn perseverance, patience, and trust. These qualities are built in us as we wait for God's plan to unfold. Waiting tests our resolve and teaches us to stand firm in our faith, preparing us to face future challenges with greater strength. The act of waiting on God isn't passive, it's an active process of growth. As we wait for answers, breakthroughs, or solutions, we are spiritually and emotionally stretched. Waiting allows us to deepen our relationship with God, teaching us to rely on Him more fully and trust Him with all aspects of our lives. Through this, we become more mature in our faith and our emotional resilience. Every struggle we face is not in vain. God uses our difficulties to mold and shape us into the people He wants us to be. Our challenges prepare us for the blessings He has in store for us. Instead of seeing struggles as random or pointless, we can trust that God is using them to refine our character and equip us for a greater purpose. God's breakthroughs often come in ways that we don't anticipate. While we may have a specific outcome in mind, God's breakthroughs are always more perfect and in line with His perfect will for our lives. Trusting that God knows what's best for us allows us to release our expectations and accept the breakthroughs He brings, no matter how different they may be from what we envisioned. To fully trust in God's plan, we must surrender our desire for control. We often want to dictate the pace and outcomes of our lives, but trusting in God means acknowledging that He knows better. Surrendering control is an act of faith, allowing God to lead us rather than relying on our own understanding or attempts to control the situation. It's through surrender that we find true peace and guidance. The same God who created the vast universe, with all its intricate design and power, is the same God who is with us in our struggles. His creative power and authority over all things extend to our personal lives, ensuring that He has the power to deliver us from any difficulty. This realization gives us confidence and comfort, knowing that the Creator of all is also our deliverer. Even when we cannot see or understand what God is doing, He is always at work behind the scenes. His ways are often hidden from us in the moment, but He is actively orchestrating the circumstances of our lives to bring about His perfect will. Trusting in God's unseen work helps us remain hopeful during difficult times, knowing that He is working for our good. Many times, the greatest breakthroughs in life come after we've endured the most difficult challenges. The intensity of the struggle prepares us to handle the magnitude of the breakthrough that follows. After being refined through adversity, we are better equipped to handle the blessings and opportunities God brings into our lives, making the breakthrough even more meaningful. True faith involves more than just believing that God will act in the future. It is also about believing that He is already at work in our lives right now. Even when we don't see immediate results, we trust that God is actively moving on our behalf, working in ways we may not yet understand. This belief allows us to remain hopeful and steadfast in our faith. Our timeline often doesn't align with God's, but His timing is always perfect. While we may feel impatient and wish for immediate results, God's timing ensures that we are fully prepared for the blessings He is bringing. Waiting on God's perfect timing builds our trust in Him, and when His plan unfolds, it's always more fulfilling than anything we could have rushed into. We often desire quick solutions to our problems, but God's process is about lasting transformation, not instant gratification. By letting go of the need for immediate answers and trusting in God's process, we allow Him to work more deeply in us, preparing us for what is truly best. This shift in perspective helps us to embrace the journey, knowing that God is at work even when the results are not immediate. Setbacks are not failures, they are setups for something greater. Often, the challenges we face and the times we feel held back are positioning us for a more significant breakthrough. God uses setbacks to refine us, teach us lessons, and prepare us for the success and blessings that are just ahead. When we trust in God's purpose, we can see setbacks as part of His greater plan for our lives. The love and power of God are far greater than any difficulty or challenge we may encounter. No matter how large our obstacles seem, they are always smaller than God's love and power. Understanding that God's love is unconditional and His power is limitless helps us approach difficulties with courage and assurance, knowing that nothing can separate us from His care or hinder His plans for us. Waiting on God is not about idly sitting back and doing nothing. It is an active choice to trust Him. During times of waiting, we continue to pray, seek His guidance, and remain faithful, even when we don't have all the answers. It's an active decision to believe that God is working and that our wait is part of His perfect plan for us. Trials serve as a mirror, revealing how deeply we rely on God in our everyday lives. When everything is going well, it's easy to think we can handle things on our own. But when faced with hardship, we are reminded of our need for God's strength and guidance. Trials deepen our dependence on God, and strengthen our relationship with Him, showing us that He is the true source of our strength. Life is full of seasons, and while we may face challenging seasons, they are not permanent. Hardships are temporary, and with God's guidance we can get through them. Just as seasons change in nature, our struggles will eventually pass, and God's promises will endure. This truth gives us hope, knowing that a better season is always ahead when we trust in God's plan. God's power is not limited by our circumstances. When we trust in His power, even the most impossible challenges become possible. God can do what we cannot, and He can bring us through situations that seem insurmountable. Our faith in His ability allows us to rise above the obstacles and experience His strength in the midst of adversity. Breakthroughs often come after a season of persistent faith and trust in God, even when we don't see immediate results. It's easy to give up when we don't see quick answers, but lasting breakthroughs are the result of continuing to trust God and persevere through the waiting period. Persistence in faith grows our character and prepares us for the breakthrough that God has promised. Our weaknesses are not something to hide from God, rather, they are opportunities for His strength to be magnified. When we acknowledge our limitations, we open the door for God's power to work through us. In our weakness, He becomes our strength, and we learn to rely on Him instead of our own abilities. This shift allows God's glory to shine through our lives. Every difficulty we overcome with God's help strengthens our relationship with Him. As we face challenges, we learn to lean on God more deeply and trust Him more fully. Our faith grows stronger, and we become more attuned to His presence in our lives. Through overcoming trials, we experience a deeper intimacy with God and gain a greater understanding of His love and faithfulness. Sometimes the breakthrough we are seeking is waiting for us to discover a deeper level of faith. God often allows us to face challenges that push us beyond our current level of belief, leading us to trust Him more fully. The breakthrough is not just in the outcome, but in the faith we develop along the way. As we grow in our faith, we are prepared to receive God's blessings in ways we hadn't imagined. While challenges are a part of life, they are temporary. God's promises, on the other hand, are eternal and unchanging. When we focus on the eternal truth of God's Word, we gain perspective on our temporary struggles. No matter what we face, we can hold on to the assurance that God's promises of hope, peace, and victory are everlasting. Even when we don't see immediate results, we must believe that God is still at work. Our limited perspective may not allow us to see the full picture, but that doesn't mean God isn't moving behind the scenes. Trusting that God is working even when there's no visible sign builds our faith and helps us to continue in the waiting process with patience and trust. While we often crave quick fixes, true growth comes during the waiting period. God uses times of waiting to develop our character, patience, and trust in Him. And solutions may provide temporary relief, but the lasting transformation occurs when we wait on God, allowing Him to work in us and build the qualities we need to handle future challenges. When we learn to be patient with God's plan, we find peace that lasts beyond our circumstances. Impatience creates anxiety and frustration, but trusting in God's timing brings a deep sense of peace, knowing that He is in control. Patience allows us to let go of worry and rest in the assurance that God is working everything out for our good. This peace transcends our current situations and helps us stay steady during times of trial. Every struggle we face is preparing us for future victories. The challenges of today refine our character, strengthen our faith, and build resilience. While it can be difficult to see in the moment, each trial shapes us into the person God is calling us to be, ready to experience and steward the victories He has in store for us. Perseverance is the key to enduring through difficult times and emerging stronger. The trials we face develop our endurance, teaching us to stay focused and committed despite obstacles. As we persevere, we gain the strength needed to handle greater responsibilities and challenges, enabling us to achieve the bigger goals God has for our lives. Faith is the firm foundation upon which breakthrough rests. Believing that God is able to act and trusting in His power to deliver us is essential for experiencing transformation. Without faith, it's difficult to see past our difficulties to the breakthrough ahead. But when we place our trust in God, He honors that faith by bringing the breakthrough we need. God's grace is always sufficient, especially in times of difficulty. His grace is not only unmerited favor, but also the strength and empowerment He gives us to endure challenges. No matter how tough things get, God's grace provides everything we need to face each day and to continue pressing forward, knowing that He is with us in every circumstance. God has the incredible ability to transform our pain into something purposeful. Our struggles are not in vain. He uses them to accomplish His greater plans for us and to help others. Through our pain, we find our purpose and are equipped to minister to others who may be going through similar challenges. God's power turns our hurt into healing, our weakness into strength. Waiting on God often requires putting aside our own desires and trusting His will instead. It's easy to want things on our own terms, but waiting helps us learn to align our desires with God's perfect will. By seeking His guidance, we discover that His plan is always better and more fulfilling than what we initially imagined, leading to greater peace and contentment. Not every trial is easily understood, but every one has a divine purpose. God uses each hardship for our growth, to draw us closer to Him or to refine our character. While we may not always understand the reasons behind our struggles, we can trust that God has a purpose for them and that His plan for us is always good. When life gets turbulent and uncertain, God's promises serve as an anchor that keeps us grounded. His word is unchanging and reliable, providing stability when everything else feels unstable. In times of trial, we can cling to the truth of His promises, knowing that He will never leave us or forsake us, and that His plans for us are filled with hope. Victory comes when we align our lives with God's purpose and follow His guidance. Our success is not based on our own efforts, but on God's leading and provision. When we submit to His plan, He brings us to victory, ensuring that every step we take is in line with His will. With God on our side, the victory is not just possible, it is assured. The waiting period isn't just about enduring, it's a time of refinement. God uses the time of waiting to purify our desires, helping us to focus on what truly matters in life. It strips away distractions and superficial wants, leading us to a deeper relationship with God and a greater understanding of what He wants to do in and through us. During this time, our hearts are aligned more closely with His. Faith empowers us to step into the unknown, trusting that God is with us every step of the way. The future may seem uncertain, but when we have faith in God's guidance and provision, we gain the courage to move forward. This trust helps us navigate unfamiliar territory with confidence, knowing that He will direct our paths and protect us. God's plan for our lives is often more wonderful and fulfilling than anything we could have imagined. His timing, though sometimes different from our own, is always perfect. By trusting in His timing and plan, we open ourselves to blessings that far surpass what we could have planned for ourselves. His perfect timing ensures that we receive everything we need at the right moment. Adversity serves as a test of our faith, revealing how deeply we depend on God. When we face challenges, we are forced to look beyond our own strength and rely fully on His power. These moments of trial deepen our trust in Him and reveal areas of our hearts where we need to grow in dependence on His provision and guidance. While trials are temporary, the lessons they impart are lasting. The growth, patience, and endurance we gain during difficult times shape our character and remain with us for life. Even when the pain of a trial fades, the lessons we learn and the strength we gain continue to influence how we approach future challenges and opportunities. In moments of weakness, God's strength shines through. When we acknowledge our limitations and rely on Him, His power is made perfect. This truth allows us to embrace our weaknesses, knowing that they create the opportunity for God to show up and show His strength. Through our weakness, His glory is revealed, and we experience His power in a profound way. Just as gold is refined in fire, our faith grows stronger when it is tested. The challenges and trials we face act as a refining process, purifying our faith and making it more resilient. Each test of our faith allows us to grow in trust and dependence on God, leading us to a deeper, more enduring relationship with Him. In the midst of every trial, God is present with us, providing peace that transcends understanding. His presence gives us the strength to endure hardships, and in His presence we find comfort and rest. No matter how intense the storm, we can rely on His peace to calm our hearts and give us the courage to press on. In times of difficulty, God's provision becomes a clear demonstration of His faithfulness. He does not leave us without help or guidance, but instead provides what we need, whether it's strength, wisdom, or tangible resources. Each act of provision in our struggles reminds us that God is faithful and will always meet our needs according to His riches and glory. Patience in the face of adversity is a powerful act of trust. As we wait for God to move in our lives, we develop greater confidence in His ability to bring about His purposes, trusting that He is at work, even when we don't understand the process, strengthens our faith and helps us to see that every challenge has a divine purpose, leading us closer to His plan for us. True victory is found when we surrender our need for control and allow God to take the lead. We often try to control outcomes, but surrendering to God's will allows us to experience true peace and victory. When we let go of our own plans and trust His greater purpose, we see His power at work in ways that bring us ultimate victory and fulfillment.